Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 568 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth. Today's theme is helping others. Our quote of the day comes to us from Anne Frank. No one has ever become poor by giving. Before we dive into today's episode, I'd like to personally invite you to check out our newest book, Process Before Results. You can grab your copy now on Amazon, and as always, we truly appreciate your support. I was introduced to Nate Green by one of my coaching clients, and I'm incredibly grateful for that connection. Nate has accomplished some remarkable things professionally, but even more impressive than his resume is the kind of person he is. I know you will enjoy today's episode. Nate, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. And man, I'm looking forward to jamming with another bald dude.
I was about to say, we have the exact same barber. We actually release these only over audio, but we record them on video. So for our listeners, Nate and I are actually twins. So if you see Nate, you see me, vice versa. First question, ask everybody is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
Let's go, man. I'm all in.
I'm curious to get your answer for our no quit question. That's a time in your life, either personally or professionally, where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Man, I will be honest with you. The biggest and hardest moment of my entire life was that moment post law enforcement when I had to retire because of heart failure. I hit this wall where you had the opportunity to take, or I had the opportunity to take long-term disability, workman's comp and all these different things. I could chase and really push. I could even get an attorney involved and go after the city for releasing me and all these different things. And in that moment, it was, Nate, are you going to go after the easy roads? And are you going to be settled with getting this governmental pension-esque retirement where you get peanuts every month? Or are you going to go chase after the best version of you? And as 23-year-old, I said, you know what? I'm not going to take unemployment. I'm not going to take any assistance. I'm going to go chase it. That is probably the hardest turning point in my life, but yet one of the best decisions that I ever made. The hardest road, though. But man, talk about some great outcomes because of it.
I love how you preface that last piece is what that road was, because it's easy for us to talk about things now in the present tense as opposed to while it's happening. And, if I was there with you many, many years ago, but hey, this is going to be really good, and I know it's going to be positive down the road, you probably would have, shot me or hired somebody too. But the reality is we can't always fast forward and then look backwards and say, okay, it is going to work out. And although this road is curvy and it's uphill quite a ways, it's obviously what led you to be here. Fun question we ask each guest is, if you had to define yourself, but you could only pick one word, what would you pick?
Relentless.
And the cover of your book is identical almost color-wise to Tim Grover's book, Relentless. So it's kind of cool how things happen. I'm holding up the cover of your book for our listeners who obviously can't see this. Suck less, do better. Now, love that because it hits you in the mouth, but I think it also tells you as a potential reader, or if you got recommended on Amazon or something like that, what you're getting from this book. So have to ask you, what was behind the title of the book? I think I know, but I'd love to hear it in your words.
So the term suck less, do better is actually something I started telling myself about 13 years ago. There was a lot of distractions going on in business, a lot of, noise. The distractions around me, other entrepreneurs, hitting certain marks. My business wasn't doing the same as their business and all these things. And I thought about derailing from my entire plan. And that's when I had to take a massive step back, or else I was going to lose it. And I had to figure out, Nate, how are you going to show up every day? Are you going to keep on comparing yourself to everybody else? Or are you going to figure out your plan, your process, and chase it harder every day? And so one morning I woke up and I said, Nate, it's time to suck less, do better. forget everybody else. You're competing against you yesterday. And that became the start of Suck Less, Do Better, which then, when it came to the publisher reaching out to me about writing a book, there was no doubt in my mind that it was going to be Suck Less, Do Better.
Competing against yourself yesterday, something that I say to a lot of my clients, I say to myself, and I think it's one of those things that it's so much easier said than done. And people post things on social media, and I know for a fact I've posted things similar to that. But for a listener who's really maybe struggling right now, or they're struggling with their consistency, do you have a piece of advice or something that helped you during that phase where it's just that idea of, I don't need to compete against everybody right this minute, and I can't compete against everybody right this minute, but I can compete, and I have 100% control over the me today versus the me yesterday?
The biggest thing there is the lighthouse, the goal. What are you competing towards? And I think that's where everybody is missing, is because their lighthouse is broken. Their lighthouse is based upon what other people told them they should be chasing after, what their friends are going after, what the people around them are finding success in. No, that's not it. You have to figure out your lighthouse and then move in that direction. And that's where, without the lighthouse, being better every day, it doesn't matter, because what are you being better for? And so you have to have that trajectory, the pathway, because if not, you get frustrated, you get distracted, and then you start looking around. If you don't have something to look at, such as your lighthouse, you're going to get distracted.
You took one of my questions. I wanted you to expand on the lighthouse, and I was curious. I think we've all heard of the idea of true north or the North Star. Is there similarities between that, or how did you come about the term lighthouse? Because I think from a voracious reader myself, but also an author, I really like when authors take things that are their own and they create something. And I, to be honest, I've never heard of lighthouse the way you use it. And it just really hit me. And obviously throughout your book, you touch on it a lot. And I remember the first time I read it, I was like, wait a second. I was like, I'm confused. And then, a paragraph or two later, but I just love how you have that visual, because once I realized what it was, I knew exactly what it was, but I'd never heard that phrase or that terminology ever used before.
Yeah, it comes down to, I love fishing. I love going offshore. I love, being out on boats. But the scariest thing when you're offshore, let's just say you're 20 miles offshore and you're trying to find your way, you get caught in storms, everything gets dark way earlier than expected, and you are struggling. You're in the suck, and you're like, wait a second, I don't know exactly which way I'm supposed to be going. I can't see. Yeah, you got your compass, and you know which direction you're going, and you're trying to find the sight of land. And in the dark, the first thing you see is the lighthouse. That's when you know that you're headed in the right direction. Land is that way. Yes, as you get close, you got to pay attention to some dangers there. But when you're looking at the trajectory of, like, if I'm going to be in a course of 240 degrees heading back to shore, man, I'm waiting to see some signs of hope. And if that lighthouse is that first thing that I can see saying I'm moving in the right direction, man, that's the biggest key. Then you keep your eyes on that. It's incredible. Like, for me, it's kind of like connective. And I've been in those storms. I've been in those situations, and I've had that beam of light become that moment of hope. When you're sitting there, lightning crack around you, you got, water tornadoes, water spouts, you got all this stuff going on. You got hail whacking you, and you're sitting there, man, you're in the hurt. And then you get that beam of light, man. And something about that hope in that second. And that's it in the trajectory of life, the hardships, the difficulties, the storms that life brings. Man, you got to have that beam of light to keep on focusing on which direction you're going.
I really like how you reference that. And I always talk about that hope is not a strategy, but hope is so important. And when you lose hope in whatever it is, personal, professional, sports, business, when you lose hope, it's just like putting the treadmill on, forget a 10 or 12, 15 incline. It's like literally putting it just straight up vertical, and it's like, okay, go. And yeah, you'll hang on for a bit, but I think it's really, really powerful that you touched on that. Early in your book, on page 16, you wrote, "I refuse to settle on good when I'm called to be great." And I want to preface this question because whenever I talk with students at high schools or middle schools or even in colleges, I have a couple slides, and I really and truly believe that every single person on earth has at least one or two things that they can be great in. But I focus on the concept that you can't be great at everything all at once, but you have to earn your greatness. And it goes back to the hope piece where I think a lot of people lose hope. And then once you lose hope, or if it's declining significantly, it's so hard to think about or picture yourself being great at anything. But wanted to ask you to touch on that sentence because I think it is so powerful and it's just so impactful.
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides of it. The first side is what is the greatness that you are called to rather than the distractions that you settle to. So I think one side is distractions, and distractions, as you read the book, I talk about cracked lenses. The cracked lenses are what other people tell us which direction to go, the expectations from other people, and all these pieces from childhood, past relationships that can derail even the way that we see ourselves. So part of it is we got to really figure out what are those aspects that we are called to based upon who we really are. And in there, we have to make sure we're removing those distractions, but there's also the different levels. And so you think about life, whether you like Nintendo, whatever you like, I don't care. There's always levels in life. And the thing is there's these expectations that other people have that we even have from our childhood of what is success. And so when people come to me, and I get this question a lot, hey, Nate, man, you're so successful. And I would say, wait a second, no, I'm in process still chasing my success because there's levels in which that we can set. And I know the greatest version of Nate that will show up on the face of this earth is not this Nate. I'm still in process. I'm still leveling up. And who I'm called to is to even level up more and more than I am today. And it's only by removing these maybe desires or even temptations to take some kind of subpar success and be like, man, I've made it. No, you haven't. You just finally hit the next level. So now you can realize how much you really don't know. So you can chase after the next version of what you really should know. And so that's for me, there's all this temptation, even right now, as we've talked about, some of the stuff in our resumes and our backgrounds. Like for me, I sold a company for 8 figures last year. That doesn't mean anything. That just means I did more than I was expected to do. That's all that means. I was expected to be more of a failure than I turned out to be. But was that what I was built to do? Absolutely not. That was just a part of the journey. It was a tick on the board. And so now I got to figure out, is that tick going to define me? And am I going to be seduced to success because maybe I check something off and maybe I don't have to work now? Man, I get to work. This makes me dangerous. And that's the difference between settling on good than really identifying how I'm called to be great.
Gotta ask a follow-up question to that because I think both selfishly but also for our listeners, you talk about settling and I want to position this question correctly because I think in life people get to a point and whether they're comfortable, it's that comfort zone, or they've achieved some level of success. And I think half the people are okay with being there and half the other people are not. And I'm always curious, and people always say, well, you're wired differently, or this person's wired differently. Yes, I think in some ways you're wired differently based off of what you read, what you see, if you have a coach or mentor, and how you tweak those things. But for someone who's listening right now, maybe they've achieved a level of success, maybe they're at that level for the past few months or a couple of years. Is there something maybe you could encourage them to try to get to that next level without looking at it from, if you don't try or get there, you've failed, as opposed to you've achieved this success? What if you get to that next level?
Let's look at it from a relationship standpoint. Let's forget success in life. So a lot of people strive to get married. That's one of their goals. So then you get married. And what happens to that relationship if you become settled and complacent in it? You stop doing the work that originally got you married. You stopped really trying to date your spouse. You stop having quality time and all these things that made that relationship great. You got married and you got complacent. Maybe you put on 50 pounds. Maybe, you spent more time with the boys than hanging out with your wife. What is it that's going to keep that marriage together? And so somebody who has achieved success, then if they find themselves in a complacent moment, then what happens is naturally you're going to start falling backwards. And all the habits and all the structures and everything that got you to that level of success, without it in practical application day in and day out, you're going to start falling back and you're going to find yourself at a later point in failure. And it's not a scare tactic. What it is, it's a realization of what is the bar in which I'm going to require myself to show up every day to make sure that I can look at myself in the mirror and be satisfied with how I showed up. Forget if I'm even trying to get better, making sure that I'm satisfied and I can actually live in my own skin today. Because if anybody who's striving for success, there's something ingrained in them, just like ingrained in all of us, to survive and thrive. And so in there, whatever it looks like, a lot of times the problem is people are chasing the wrong kind of success. They might be chasing money success because that's what they're told it's good. But really, they should be chasing impact success or solving world hunger or something else. The problem is that the definition of success is so convoluted. Money is a tool. I think money is connected with success too much. My resume, would I consider myself a success? I would consider myself not a failure. I would say, hey, listen, I'm still on my road to success. I'm not there yet. It's just a time where I get to have a little bit more freedom. But now it's what do I do with that freedom? And so it's once again this capabilities. Like some people call it success. Now I call it freedom. I call it now I can go a different direction. Now I can live with a little bit different flexibility. Where if Chris calls me and say, "Hey Nate, I'm in town. Can we get together? Let's jam. Let's do some pictures. Let's have some fun. Let's how can we connect with people? How can we do something different?" If I get a call saying, "Hey, I need you up in Connecticut," I can go to Connecticut. And if they're like, "Hey, our budget's," I don't care. I'll get there. Why? Because if I have the opportunity to talk to 300, 400 people, impact for that many people, great, cool, we're good. And that's the difference. It's all about how you define that success. And leveling up success is not always leveling up inside the same pillar. It might be money pillar is solved now. I want to spend the rest of my life helping people build wells in Africa, where I'm actually spending some of this money. I'm depleting assets, and that's okay because success looks different at different phases. Just make sure that you're always moving. Make sure that you're constantly listening to your heart. Where are you supposed to be going?
I think it's such an interesting point of view when you mentioned monetary success and then impact success. And I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have success through money, meaning you've achieved or accomplished a level of financial success, whether that's a financial number annually, whether that's a home, whether that's a car, whether that's setting yourself up for a very successful financial retirement. There's nothing wrong with that. But to your point, I think as we all go through different phases of life, our definition of success changes, not because we're complacent and we can never, stop going, but it gets to a point where, and I really appreciate you sharing the idea of, whether you can impact people, 300 people. It reminds me of what Zig Ziglar, who I think is the greatest of all time in our field, where his whole objective was who can I impact, who can I help today? And his famous quote is, you can have anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. I remember the first couple of times I heard it, I'm like, yeah, it sounds great. And like, that's what people say. And especially on, stage, like, oh, like, it doesn't matter what I'm getting paid. But the reality is, I think that's a true definition of karma. If you really and truly want to do the right thing and help people, whether it's 1 today, 2 tomorrow, 5 the next day, it's why I asked that first question is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today? Because I know for a fact you are, and I am myself. So therefore it's 2 and 4 and 6, 8, you go down there and it compounds. Got to ask you, when you first were in your early 20s to now, 20 years later, give or take, I'm sure your definition of success has probably changed tenfold.
Oh my gosh. It's like success has been defined in so many different ways, and even goals constantly defined. Keep in mind, I was raised in a very poor home. I was then a cop, so poor. And I was built to be poor, like all my wiring from childhood. Like it was like I was taught how to pinch every penny. I was taught how to make no money work. And I was taught how to survive financially. I was never taught how to thrive financially. And so when you start building a business, and in my first year, I met this old guy, and I can't remember his name, is at Starbucks, and it was probably maybe 3 or 4 months, and he's like, Nate, listen, I love what you're doing with your businesses. He's like, but just remember, you got to focus on people. And I remember like one day I was sitting there planning, and I wrote this note: people first, money will come. And that has been my business motto in every business I've ever had. People first, money will come. And that's similar to that Zig Ziglar quote, because when you impact lives and you change lives, then people naturally want to be a part of your journey too. And the reason why I give you all this is because my remapping of my goals had to change constantly and constantly get bigger and broader. And I had to be okay with being successful, and I had to be okay with being wealthy, and I had to walk through all this. And then it also came to this point where my business was growing so fast. And here's the cool part: Inc. 5000, the last 4 years of my ownership, sold for an 8-figure number, 100% referral base, never a penny in advertising, all off of relationships. People first, money will come.
I we could probably end there. We're not going to, but I think that that's such a powerful way to discuss the true value of impact success. And I want to be clear, I don't want to gloss over the success you did have in the stat that you just shared with us. Congratulations on that. That is very, very impressive. But
Appreciate that.
I think it's even more impressive. And we all know about the idea of legacy. And, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, no one's going to say, hey, wait a second. When Nate was 86 years old, what was his net worth? But the reality is they're going to remember the impact you had on them. And it's so much easier said than done to really focus on, okay, well, people first. Because at the end of the day, you have to eat, you have to put a roof over your head, whether you have spouse, kids, you have to provide for others. But I could not agree more. People first, money will come. I think that's so powerful. And I think social media today has changed the scope of that completely around, where people are focusing first and foremost on followers. How big is your audience? What are your views? What are your comments? And I don't want to in any way, shape, or form say those things are not important, nor should people not care at all about that. But I really and truly believe, and I'm still building, my business and my brand now, that it's doing the right thing each and every day, but building it the right way. And it's hard because, it's not easy. And I think you would attest that where you are today, you didn't start yesterday and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, Chris, like I can definitely do it, but I'm a gazillionaire now and I've only been working for, 24 hours. So I'll share all my knowledge. It's probably that adage, which I know you've heard, is, I was an overnight success. It took me fill in the blank, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And people always have fun quotes about it, which I think are really fun to think about, because people see the highlight right now, but they don't always get to look under the hood.
Yeah, it's, the people game is a slow game. You don't build a people business overnight. The reason why is because you got to actually care and pour into people. And that doesn't mean don't charge people. Don't hear me wrong, because I charge for my one-on-one coaching. But here's the thing: is the value I'm going to bring in my one-on-one coaching is going to go beyond what I charge. So everybody's always going to give a great value, and then there's follow-up, and there's actual care and concern about their life, their growth, their process, their success. That's where you go deep. That's where you go open, you go vulnerable. You really impact and you care enough and walk through the process. But it is not a fast game, because the referral game, man, you have to really start changing lives. And you know what? If your goal is to be an overnight success and make a bunch of money quick, you know what? Go sell something else. Don't serve people. And it's a shame because so many people are in these rich fast, and even you see some coaches out there, they're trying to sell these programs that are like a joke when it comes time for value. I'm not gonna throw any names out there, but it's like, man, like change lives. Like if you change lives, you'll never have to worry about your reputation. You'll never have to worry about your wallet. You'll never have to worry about anything else because the people are there. And for me, that's actually why I ended up selling my business, is because I've been in the financial games for the last 17 years. And in the end, in 2023, I told my wife, I said, I'm not able to have as much impact as I want to have. And so I want to do more. And so that's where it's like, this has been a great run, but God's got more for me. I'm called for another level up. And it was time to go, not knowing what the next leg was going to look like. And it was only once I took the faith steps to put my business on the market, once I took the faith steps of taking the next step, that's when the doors started opening. That's when the light started to become brighter. That's when everything started moving forward. And still, even today, it's faith steps day in, day out. Show up now, show up right now. This is what matters. This call, this podcast, this meeting, this coaching client, this is what matters. Show up today. And now you can go after the next.
I'm transitioning to the next question that, based off of what you just said, I'm actually more curious now than I was before. I know you know the famous Jim Rohn quote, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If I could grant you dinner tonight with any 5 people, dead or alive, that you could level up with, who would you pick for your 5?
It would definitely start with The Rock. Man, that guy is not only just a stellar dude, but he is a person that gives back a lot. The other side is Ed Milet is probably somebody that I would love to share some food with. And that's a huge thing. Denzel Washington, I think, is one of them, because I think he's been really open about his journey and his mental health and a lot of the things that he's worked through. And obviously, if Jim Rohn was still here, man, my dude, I love that guy, man. My favorite quote from him is, if you inspire an idiot, now you just have an inspired idiot. And the reason why I love that, and I take that into every keynote, every single thing I do, it's not just about getting people to take action. It's giving them steps and process and active movements and tell them exactly how to get there. If you inspire them without a process, then now you just got a bunch of inspired idiots, and that's never going to work. And obviously, for the 5th, since you're the one that's talking about it, you be there with me too.
I love it. My famous Jim Rohn quote is, "Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better." It's actually behind me. I can see it right now. And I actually bought it framed on Amazon many, many years ago because I liked it. But
it's awesome. I
can't tell you how many times it's right on top of my printer, and I'll just be getting something, whether it's for business or personal printing, and I know it's there, and I can't tell you how many times quotes have really just helped me along the way, which is why I post a lot of quotes, because the one thing that I realized, just like you talked about your definition of success and helping people, you never know when a quote is going to hit somebody, and you're just like, whoo. And that, to me, like, you'll say, that's the favorite quote ever. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like, it's nice. And I'll say it to someone else, and they'll be like, dude, I just got that tattooed on my arm because it's the greatest thing ever. And but that goes into hand in hand with why people like different movies, different actors, different shows, because at the end of the day, we're all wired differently. And going back to Denzel Washington for a second, not only do I agree with what you said about how he's been honest, but he's been honest with so many more things. And obviously, he's in I think he's early 70s now, and his career has been insanely successful. And I'm sure his definition of success and all those things clearly changed over the years. But he's been so open over the past few years, especially on social media, about not falling into the trap. And I watched a video where he gave advice to Michael B. Jordan about staying off social media and don't put everything out there. And Michael B. Jordan eloquently spoke about how Denzel said, if you put everything out there, why is somebody going to go watch you on Broadway or go see one of your movies? And it's just interesting how he values, I feel, and I want to get your 2 cents on this, some of the I don't want to say secrecy, but just not the need to just go out there and show everything. It's, yeah, like I'm going to talk about important things, but I don't need to talk about absolutely everything and share it with everybody out there that maybe doesn't interest everybody.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an ideology there, and I really like it, because for me, I don't love social media. It's there. My team hates me because I have fast cars, and you will not ever see my fast cars on social media. And I'm just not that guy. Like if you like me because of what I have in my garage, then you're the wrong person. Because if you want true success, let's look at personal balance sheets. Let's look at your actual net worth. I don't care what you can rent. I don't care what you can put on finance terms. That's not what it's about. It's about principles. And so for me, I have fast cars. They're not on social media. I'm sure at some point I'll get forced into doing something with them, just happen to be in there. But I don't think I've ever put a picture of any of my cars on social media because I'm just not that guy. I buy those cars because they're fast. And I love that adrenaline dump going obviously only the speed limit, but I love it. And I buy the cars for me. If it's not fast, I don't want it. Like that's it. And they're like, come on, they just put it on. But why? Like I don't care. And so that's where those that know me, those that want to truly get to know me, I can help. I don't care what struggles you're working with in your success process. I can help you level up. And a lot of times what we do is instead of working on your practical steps in your business of systems and processes, which I can help in that side, the first thing we step back is figure out what's up here in your head and your cracked lenses that are keeping you from leveling up. And we fix the root cause, which is you. And then after that, we move into your practical steps of in your business, your teams, those things. But if we never fix this piece back here, you're never going to be able to win. And for me, the only reason why I know I can fix you is because I'm one of the most jacked up people in the head that you'll ever meet. And I spent my entire life working to fix myself to be able to level up day in and day out and how to achieve success, even though I was pre-programmed for failure.
You mentioned Ed Milet as one of your guests for dinner, and I admire Ed and have had the opportunity to exchange some messages with him over the past couple of years. But he often talks about he's able to coach people through things because he's gone through them. And that to me is something that I really admire. And I want to be clear with your comment about cars and things like that. I could not agree more in the sense of those things. I've had some crazy cars in my adult life, and I'd be lying if I said they weren't cool and if they weren't fun and definitely fast. And I've driven some of them way too fast over the years. But when I'm looking at people that I want to bring into my circle or connect with, to your point, the ones that I want to connect with aren't the ones that are showing houses and cars and things. And I want to be very clear, in no way do I want to come across that judging somebody on what they like or what they do. But I want to know, what was your tough time, right? That's why I asked that second question for our guest No Quit Story. I want to know how you got out of it. I want to know, did you have a coach? Did you have a mentor? How you got to where you are today? Because to me, it's that much more impressive for people that have been through adversity than people that have been handed things and, have really had an easy time along the way. I want everybody to have as easy a time they can, but it's learning from those things. And Tom Brady, to me, is somebody I looked up to when he was playing, especially that year when he tore his ACL. I don't want to interview him right after he wins his Super Bowl because I know what he's going to say. Oh, it's all about the team and great coach and we played together. Of course, that's what everybody says. But I want to know about when you lost a Super Bowl. What did you think your very first workout, right? What were you thinking when you didn't make the playoffs? What were you thinking when you had your worst performance? And how did you mentally and physically get to that point? And it's so powerful when you can level up by surrounding yourself with people that have gone through those things that are maybe not identical, but similar to some of the struggles or challenges that you're going through.
I would agree with you 100%. And that's actually one of the reasons why I respect that in my life, because I really feel like he's come through a lot of adversity, a lot of difficulties, and for me, like my life, man, it's been a blenders of disasters everywhere from heart failure to I was paralyzed for a few months to a really tough divorce, custody battle, child abuse situation. I mean, you name it, and it just seemed like uh, roadblocks just constantly hit. And I kept on taking baseball bats to the face through the success journey. I mean, I've had both biceps ripped off, complications on putting them back together. I've had all kinds of weird stuff happen to me. I mean, it's weird. 26 car accidents. I mean, you name it. I mean, it's been some crazy days that I've walked through, and when I look back, the one word is perspective. And I think the disasters we go through, when we learn to bootstrap day in and day out and constantly progress who we are, if we can progress through the storm, think about how fast we can run on the other side of the storm. And for me, that has always been my prayer to God is God, don't let it be in vain. Let me grow, give me the strength, let me become stronger through it so that I can impact more people because of it. And then God in my head is the way he speaks to me. He's a little snarky like I am. And he's like, Nate, listen, it's up to you how you use it. I'm going to provide you opportunities. You got to be the one that follows through and helps and guides and impacts. I'm giving you the opportunity. I'm going to allow you to use all this storms and difficulties and hardships. But my dude, it's up to you.
I think God takes the form of some of us in some ways, and your snarky comment is funny because I guess some of my conversation with God, I just see him and hear him say, really, Chris, like that's your best, like really, like
That's
really?
all you got, fool?
And
That's
like,
it's like a little Mr. T in there. Little Mr. T.
Speaking of social media, wanted to ask if maybe there are one or two people out there that you follow that put out really good stuff and maybe you introduce or potentially reintroduce to our listeners.
For me, I mean, I use social media with a lot of inspiration. So, I mean, I follow a lot of pastors, Stephen Furtick. A lot of people like have their issues with him, but a lot of his clips, a lot of his stuff is very inspiring. I mean, for me, I don't entertain with social media. I go to social media only when I'm there for certain things. And a lot of times it's like, hey, listen, if you're going to scroll, you might as well scroll and get kicked between the teeth, kicked in the forehead, something like, and for me, I would say that there's no one particular that I'm like, oh my gosh, I love, this guy or that guy. I think there's so many great people out there, but, man, you know what? Let me see if I can find, because I always forget his name, but man, his stuff is always so incredible. And he's got his whole book about chasing failure, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but man, he always has some great content. And as we continue, I'll grab his name because man, like his stuff is always a good thing. And he's a great Christian dude. And his name is Ryan Leake. Great guy. And so his stuff, it always leaves you feeling good. And you know what? I watch a lot of positive stuff. I don't spend a ton of time on social media, but when I do, I'm very particular about keeping my mind focused. And then if I literally need some entertainment, I mean, all you do is go watch Qualified Captain for 5 minutes, and you got enough laughs to last you the rest of the day. So, that's probably like about as far as I go on social media is very specifically, pastors, teachers, inspirational people, and then Qualified Captain for some good laughs.
I had the privilege of having Ryan on the show about a year or so ago. Awesome guy. And then I'm holding your book up again for those that obviously can't see because they're on audio. Suck Less, Do Better. So you can't answer your book, but I'm curious if you're currently reading something or if you've read something recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Yeah, man, I think Erwin McManus has an incredible book. I think it's called The Last Arrow. that one is very intense in a great way. That was released, and he finished writing it after he found out he had cancer, and so you could feel the heart in there. And so Earl McManus is just just a great author, a great teacher. So I would probably say that that's one that I finished, just wrapped up for the second time about 3 weeks ago, and man, just great, hit you square between the eyes, gives you exactly what you need. We got to live for beyond just money or fame or any of this stuff. We got to have a bigger purpose, and I think that's a part of it, is like leaving it all here. Like, literally shoot your last arrow, go after it all. Like, don't leave anything behind, no regrets. We're called to go 100%, including, it's not saying going 100% in business, it's saying going 100% here. It means impact, it's people, it's relationships, it's our family. And I think that's the biggest key, is what are you called to do while you're here? And man, you better go 100%.
And then for our listeners who want to connect with you or find out a little bit more about you, what's the best way for them to do so? And also, if there's a preferred way for them to get your book.
I always tell people I'm a little old school, so carrier pigeons are probably the best. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. So my website is successwithnategreen.com. And that's the best way. There's a contact form. We have some free courses on there, some programs, the links to the books on there. You can find out more information about me, all the insanities that I've dealt with and went through. And then, in the book, there's some free resources for people to go get some videos. And, that's the best place. I got another book coming out in about 4 months this year. So I'm excited about that. And it's going to have a really cool project that's connected to the book. So I can't give any secrets, but it's going to be pretty incredible. And so really looking forward to that being released later this year, and finishing up the writing of that.
That is awesome. Congratulations ahead of time. The project Nate is referencing is he wants all of his clients to work with me instead of him. So that's really nice of Nate to do that. And then
the bigger, better bald man.
And then last question I have for you is if you have some parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
It's a little funny. I have this saying that with a lot of my coaching clients, and it's use the inner 2-year-old. So the biggest thing is I want people to think every time you want something, every single time you don't want something, when you're driven in a direction or pulled from a direction, engage the inner 2-year-old. Ask yourself why, and go all the way down to your past relationships, your childhood. Figure out the deep-rooted why, either driving you in a direction or keeping you from a direction, and never settle until you get down to the root cause of every single thing. And then use your new perspective of today to remap, reframe, and figure out what is it you're really supposed to be chasing after.
I think that's a phenomenal way to end today's episode. Nate, I truly appreciate you. For our listeners, I definitely recommend Nate's book, and you can find out everything at his website. And again, I appreciate you, and I hope that you and I can connect again soon.
Chris, this is great. We'll definitely do it. Let's make a point of it, baby.
Thank you for listening to episode number 568. One thing Nate said really stuck with me. People first, and the money will come. Simple, powerful, and true. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with one question. In your personal and professional life, are you more focused on helping others, or are you chasing the money first? There's nothing wrong with wanting success. There's definitely nothing wrong with building a good life and achieving financial freedom. But I believe it becomes far more meaningful when you help others succeed along the way. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of our Team No Quit community. Go crush your day, show up with intention, and never forget, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.